Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at NECA's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live-action foot soldier figure, which is one I was very excited for. I've always liked the live-action foot soldier designs, and obviously NECA did a really good job with their quarter-scale Ninja Turtles, so it's only appropriate that we get some more characters to go with them. We know we're going to be getting Shredder down the road, and I'm very pumped for that, but for now, we have only the Foot Clan to look at, which is a fairly basic design. I mean, there's not a whole lot they could do with it, and for the most part, they did a really good job. There's a whole lot to like about this thing. We're going to talk about all of that. There are a couple little details that are probably less than desirable, but I doubt very much it's going to be a huge factor. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands almost exactly 17 inches tall. I know it doesn't look like that on camera. It's 17 inches. That's parallax, which makes him just over 43 centimeters, and he does scale pretty well with the turtles. Just because they're so big, I won't put it on screen right now. I will have a photo for you at the end though, so you can see exactly how he scales with one of them. But it's a fine scaling. I think it's fine. These guys look pretty good. I'm very pleased overall with the aesthetic on these guys. There's completely basically black plastic for the entire figure with a little bit of dry brushing on top, and there's only so much you can do with that. I mean, that's exactly what it should look like, and that's fine. So good points for that for NECA. They did add a little bit of color down here for the belt, which is nice. It's just slightly different shade than the rest of the suit, which is a good thing. One thing that bugs me though, and is aesthetically inaccurate as far as I can tell, I went back and watched as many scenes as I could find without watching the entire movie again, and they don't have like a black belt on top of the other one. So I think if they were going to add this elastic one, which I guess they did just so we can put accessories on their waist, it should be like this color, grayish brown. So it does stand out a little bit, and I probably will just take that off on mine, frankly. But otherwise, they're pretty much aesthetically accurate. I guess they could have technically made the eyes hollow and put like a painted eye underneath there and then made this mesh, but that would have been a significant amount of work, so I'm not going to really fault them for that. We do have the cloth bandana back here. I guess that's okay. That's pretty good. I don't know what it is about these, but these are curling up pretty bad, whereas the turtle ones didn't do that so much. That's not a big deal, but we do have that, so I guess you can pose it with this over the shoulder if you wanted to or whatever, but that's fine. I don't personally mind it if they just did sculpt work for that, but it's fine the way it is. So anyway, that's okay. I mean, aesthetics, everything's sculpted nicely, everything's good. There's lots of texturing. They got all the details right for the most part, so I guess you could make the argument that there's like a huge gap between the arm and the chest, just because of like how much this actually comes out for the clothing part, but that really, it's not that much of an issue, especially once you pose them. That allows you to actually get the arms closer together for a pose, so I don't mind that. I think it's okay, and all the wrinkles look pretty good, so I'm gonna give this guy an 8 out of 10 for the aesthetics. It's basic, but that's what it's supposed to be, so that's okay. The only thing really throwing it off is this thing, which I'm just gonna take off. I don't need to put something on his waist, and I'd rather it look good. So there's that. Now, as far as accessories go, we have a few different hands. We have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package. Then we have 2 different sets of gripping hands, and it seems to me that the only difference in those is the size of the grip opening, which is fine for the different weapons. It's unfortunate though that none of the hands have the vertical hinge. They all have the horizontal hinge, and since these hands are meant for holding weapons, particularly stick-shaped weapons, it's really advantageous to have the vertical grip for posing purposes. You don't really need to bring the hand side to side, so that's kind of unfortunate, but it's not a big deal, obviously. And then we do get 2 big wide open hands for your style posing, so that's good. As far as weapons go, we have the big axe type thing. I can't remember what it's called specifically, but that's a very iconic weapon from the one scene where they chop through the floor. Then we have the nightstick or tonfa. We have some basic nunchucks. We have some fancy nunchucks with paint and metal chains. We have kind of a, I guess you would call this a ninjato since there's no curve to it, a straight katana. And then we have a sai. So decent smattering of accessories. I think that's pretty good. And so I'm going to give him a rating of 8 out of 10 for the accessories. Lots of weapons is nice. Lots of hands is nice. Not having vertical hinges is not as nice for this type of batch of accessories. Okay, moving on to the articulation, which has been somewhat of a sticking point for the quarter scale figures. Sometimes they're too tight, sometimes they're too loose. Sometimes they just can't have that much range. So let's see how this turns out. For the head, it feels like it's probably a single Could be a double ball peg in the top of the neck, and in the bottom of the neck another single probably. But as you can see, you get really good range, and I'm not having any trouble posing it. It's not too tight, and it's certainly not too loose. So yeah, that's fine. You should have no trouble posing this guy's head. I mean, it's not like you're going to be putting a quarter scale figure in like the most dynamic of poses anyway, unless you live in a mansion and have no space limitations. But it looks like, as far as the head goes anyway, you really shouldn't be disappointed. You can pose this guy pretty well. Let's see how far he can look up. Yeah, he even looks up pretty far. It does get a little weird in the neck there, but that's okay. And it does look down, so really nice there for the neck. For the shoulder, let's see, this is all flexible. This is a separate piece right here at this seam. So for the shoulder, I think we're gonna get pretty good range out of it. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's not even too tight. So basically horizontal there. Maybe the shoulders sit a little bit low on this guy, maybe, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much. I think it's probably fine, especially if you don't have the head up. Yeah, it's okay. That's fine. So basically horizontal range there on the swivel hinge. As far as rotation goes, it's unencumbered other than this is here, obviously, which it has to be, so there's nothing they could do about that. It will flex, but it's not going to flex that much, so obviously you are limited to some degree. There's no bicep swivel in the actual bicep. That's going to come down here at the elbow. So for those of you that don't like that situation, this could be a problem, but we do get a double jointed elbow, which is very nice. You don't get the absolute best range out of the double joint though, unfortunately. As you can see, that's as far as it's gonna go, and it's only a little bit better than 90. I think it's enough personally, but you know, a lot of people want a like full 180 bend out of a double jointed elbow. It's not really necessary, so I'm not gonna fault it too much for that. Could it be better? I guess, but I think it's fine. And then you do get a swivel at the top and at the bottom, so that's where you're gonna get your bicep swivel. And that's, you know, so practically speaking, everybody seems to like bicep swivels up here, and generally I'm for that as well. However, once you have the arm up against the chest, having the swivel up here doesn't help, because the pec or the bicep bumps into the pec and you can't go anywhere. So having it down here does allow you to bring the arm across the chest in a better way. So I think it's kind of like a 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other, or however that saying goes. So I'm okay with that. Having the swivel down there is fine. For the forearms, the gauntlet itself is a separate piece that can rotate around, but as I mentioned, you can rotate the arm around at the elbow itself. And then for the wrists, of course, you have your swivel and your hinge. For the torso, they did something which I don't know how I feel about it. Let me move the camera down a little bit so you have a better angle on it. So we have at least a single, could be a double ball peg, and the entire shirt part is one piece, including the belt, and that goes over the crotch piece. I'm not sure that's the best way to go about that. I'm kind of thinking that this piece here, the whole belt area, could just be floating. Or even maybe connected to this crotch piece, and then have this part kind of tuck into that. I think that might have worked a little bit better for them, but as it is, you do get your rotation out of it. That's fine. It leans only a very little bit, which is why I'm kind of concerned. I'm thinking that wasn't the best way to go about it. If you had this be a separate piece, that was kind of like, if you could see through here, if it was kind of shaped like that, and then just connected on another ball peg in here, you'd be able to move the torso around a whole lot and have this just float to hide the gap. But as it is, you can't move the torso really very much at all. It's mostly just a swivel. So that's a little bit of a bummer. For the hips, we do have the soft underwear here. It's not that soft though, so let's see how much it's going to impede everything. Going out to the side, that's a really heavy ratchet. It goes basically horizontal though, so that's fine. Barely bunches up at all, so that's pretty good. And then going forward, it's less of a heavy ratchet, but it is a ratchet. And we got not quite horizontal, but pretty good. And it does bunch a little bit. I think it's pretty good though. Make sure when you're doing it, it bunches in. The diaper piece, make sure it's bunching that way. If you stretch it out, so like if you tuck the leg under this part and kind of flex it that way, you're gonna end up stretching this, and you don't wanna do that. You're much better off pushing it in, so little pro tip there, but you get pretty decent range out of that. And then you do have your thigh swivel there. And as for the knees, we have a swivel and a hinge at the top part, which gives you almost 90 degrees right there. It will rotate though minimally, and I'm not sure what purpose that really serves, but it can rotate up in there. And then we have another joint down here, obviously, which gives you basically as much range as you could want. That's really good. No problems there. No loose joints on this guy either. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble getting this guy to hold a pose. And then lastly, we have our ankle joint, which does go back really far. No issues there at all. And going forward, it's a little tricky because you have to kind of make it overlap, but if you take a little bit of effort, you can do it. You can bend the foot pretty far forward, so that's nice. And then you do have your ankle rocker as well. So it's got basically all the articulation you could want, and all the joints work pretty well, and it's sculpted really well. So that's fine. I mean, there are a couple of slight issues with the articulation, but nothing I'd really worry about too much. So I'm gonna give the articulation, only because the waist isn't as good as it could be, and that kind of makes kind of a big deal, I guess. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10 for the articulation, which is really good considering it's a quarter scale figure, so I like that a whole bunch. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the final verdict on this guy. Aesthetically speaking, I am very, very pleased with this. It's gonna look wonderful up against the turtles. The articulation's pretty good, accessories are pretty good. I'm gonna give this guy a final verdict of... I'm gonna say 9 out of 10. I think NECA did a really good job with this. There were some questions when they first showed images of this, but they seem to have corrected them, and I'm very pleased with it overall, and I think you guys will be too. I'm very happy to have it, and boy, I can't wait for this to end up being in the smaller scale. I'm gonna scoop up a bunch of those guys to pose with my turtles. Probably not. I'll probably get like 2. But either way, very nice figure. I definitely recommend it. Alright guys, that's enough of me rambling. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I do have thousands of reviews on the channel, which are all meant to help you out. All 100% objective. That's not true. As objective as I can be, though. So make sure you go ahead and check out those playlists. It's organized for your viewing pleasure. And I do have new videos up just about every single day, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't. And in the meantime, keep collecting.